Thank you, Paul, and thank you, LanguageCert and Macmillan, for sponsoring for this talk today. Now, I'd like to know a little bit about you all. So can you tell me, are you all teachers, and what age group do you teach? So just write on the chat box, okay? Good afternoon, Barbara. Yeah, right. Yes, 14 to 19, Laura. Okay, so scuola media, yeah, excellent. And also superiore, excellent. Anyone else? Just so I understand, from 6 to adults, Irene, okay, that's a lot. Adult refugees, interesting, very interesting. Private language schools, super, super. Well, today I will be looking at the B2 C1 exam. I see a lot of you teenagers. Excellent. So have any of you had any experience with LanguageCert exams? Have any of you prepared students before for the B2 and the C1? Oh, you're all participating. Great, because I have to keep you awake today. Yes, Rosanna, you have. Okay, yes, okay, super. All right. So today, hopefully, I can give you some more tips on how to help prepare them. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just go through what I'll be talking about today. All right. So as I said, the B2 C1, I will start with some activities regarding the speaking exam, and then I will go on to look at the written exam and give you some things that I think are effective with my students, and also we'll look at some preparation material. All right, so let's start at the beginning. So let's start with the speaking exam. Now, I am going to go through a little bit how the exam's structured for those of you who maybe haven't had experience with the exam before. So part one consists of short questions. Part two is the part that I really enjoy preparing students for. It is a role play where the examiner initiates and then the candidate has to reply, and then vice versa. It's a very interesting task. Part three is a two-way discussion where the examiner and the candidate have to reach an agreement, and they have a table. I'll show you that. And part four is a monologue on a topic, and then they have follow-up questions. And the C1 is very, very similar, but it's more abstract questions. And also there is a spidergram in part three instead of a table, but the exam is very similar. It's the criteria, obviously, that change. All right, so let's look at part one, and I'll just show you a little piece of the exam. All right, just so you understand the very first part of the exam.
Spoken ESOL exam, communicator level. This is the 1st of July 2019, and Joanna Paolinelli exam begins. Hello, my name is Kristina Kürti. Can you spell your family name for me, please?
Hi, my name is Joanna Paolinelli, Patkai.
Thank you. And which country are you from?
From Hungary.
Thank you. Now, in part one, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself and your ideas. Okay. All right?
Yes.
The first topic is television. What kinds of programs do you like and dislike?
Okay, so the first part of the exam are personal questions, right? Now, just looking at a little piece, and how can you, as teachers, help to prepare for this part of the test? Any ideas? As I say, I'm going to be getting you to collaborate with me today, because it's important for me also to get your ideas, all right? So, how would you as teachers help them with this part one, asking personal questions? Any ideas? I've got some for you, of course, but okay. So let me just see. Oops. Okay, just let me have a look. Excellent. Role playing, absolutely. Yes, force yourself to answer simple questions. Yes, Veronica, excellent. Yes, excellent, excellent. Now, another question. So very, very often I say to my students, right, because sometimes they go into the exam, they're quite nervous, and they get asked a question that maybe is irrelevant to them, and then sometimes they can actually freeze up, because it's not easy for students to do this exam, especially in an exam situation. And many students, they're not used to this type of exam. So I always say to them, don't be afraid to just flip the question if it's irrelevant to them, okay? So that is one little tip. So for example, if they're asked what types of film they enjoy, maybe if they don't watch films, they could say, well, actually, I prefer watching Netflix TV series, so that they can flip the question, all right? That's one little tip. And then another tip is to teach them how to play for time. So I'll maybe give them some expressions like, yes, just let me think about that, or that's an interesting question. These little things can actually help them get over the anxiety of the first part of the exam. All right. I also, just some little activities, some digital, non-digital activities. You can actually ask your students to make up different questions on various topics. And as you said, yes, role play them with their partner, and even create a little game. This is, for example, a world war on different topics where they spin the wheel and they have to talk about the topic. But the role play is actually interesting, because what I do sometimes is I say to them, okay, let's choose a famous person or someone you admire. And we do part one where one of the students is actually acting out the famous person, and the other student asks them questions about the famous person and they record themselves. So that's a role play where the students actually have to become someone else, and that does motivate a lot of my students. All right, now, obviously, with over the last few months, if so many things have come out with artificial intelligence, and one of the advantages of artificial intelligence is that you students can do a lot of practice on the parts of the exam at home, because very often in class we don't have time to follow every student, to listen to every student, and it's really good practice for them to practice at home before they come into class. I'm going to give you two, this is one that I use. This is called TalkPal AI, and it's completely free, and you can have conversations on different topics, and you also get feedback. And also our favorite, Chat GPT. Now, who has tried? I think a few months ago when I asked this question, a few people had tried Chat GPT, but now if I say to you, who has tried Chat GPT? Are you all familiar with it? Have you been using Chat GPT? Oh, yes, you have. Super. Yes, Vivian. Yes. You see, a few months ago, few people had. So to prepare tests, Veronica, yes. But I started to use it with my students, and you can create little role plays with them where they can practice, and also you can actually download the app now and you can talk to ChatGPT. And a fantastic thing is that now ChatGPT actually can understand my accent, my Scottish accent, because at the beginning I had difficulty with artificial intelligence, but now it's definitely improving. So I don't know if that's positive or not, but it is improving. And the students can actually practice the role play with ChatGPT and give ChatGPT the level of their English, so B1, B2. So this is something I wanted to share with you. I will be talking a little bit about artificial intelligence in this webinar. All right, so my favorite task, which is the role play task, I'm going to show you a little part of it. So basically, the examiner initiates a role play. I'll just show you how she does that.
Role play some situations, and I want you to start or respond. Okay? The first situation is that I'm your neighbor. I start. Hello, my name is Christy. I have just moved in next door.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Hannah.
Oh, hi, nice to meet you too.
How are you?
Oh, well, fine. We're very busy with moving.
Okay. Now, I've got a question for you. What difficulties might students come up against in this role play task? Any ideas of what students may find difficult in this task? All right. The right frame of mind, unknown, yes. I feel, what's really important here is to prepare them for this task. They might not understand their role. Yeah, they might not even relate to the role. Spontaneity, absolutely. They don't understand the language. We think, we as teachers think, a role play is an exciting task, and it is. But if they don't understand the language, as you say, Malika, and they can't relate to it, sometimes it can be difficult for students. So obviously we have to practice this part a lot, okay? And even improvisation, yes. Being shy, Mauro. A lot of students are shy, and for them to do a role play is asking a lot. But then there's the other side to this task, and I find that this task really works on authenticity of the language. If they have got a good level of a B2 or C1, this really gives them an opportunity to bring out the language, to speak naturally. And a lot of young people today are actually quite good at this task because they do know about authentic language. So how can we help them with this? Well, what I do is obviously we find ways of brainstorming how to reply, things like, yes, I love it, or yes, it's really nice, just ways of replying, okay, naturally. Also ways to start, for example, we've got your neighbors, you lost your keys, you start, okay? So, excuse me, and I seem to have lost my keys. I don't suppose, things like that. Or do you think I could ask you to? All ways of, yes, thank you, Josie, of finding expressions to help them, because once they start, they're okay. But it's the beginning of the role play that sometimes is difficult for them. Absolutely. I really like to get my students to invent role plays and have fun. I say, okay, let's just become little actors and let's have fun. And for example, some of them actually, some of the role plays, the candidates have got to be sympathetic, or sometimes they've got to be irritated, like the neighbor with the dog. So it's nice for them to actually exaggerate intonation, and they do enjoy it, absolutely. Yeah, so they maybe become the grumpy neighbor, and they practice all this. So definitely have fun with this part too, absolutely. And also, again, back to ChatGPT, there are like add-ons to ChatGPT, and one of them is the negotiator, and it can actually help your students to negotiate in the language of negotiation, which is such an important language to be able to use it. Absolutely. Yes, they find it difficult to interact with their peers. Yes, Laura, you're right. Even in their native language. So we really have to practice the parts of the speaking exam. It's really important, all the parts of the speaking exam. All right. And again, TalkPal AI, which is free, you can actually chat. And there's also some role playing tasks, but that's not free. But maybe you as a teacher can maybe invest in that. And there's actually interesting role play activities to try out in class. All right. So part 3 is exchanging information. So let's have a little look at part 3.
Part of the test, we're going to discuss something together. We are planning to go on holiday with some friends, and let's talk about what kind of holiday we want and make some decisions. Here are some ideas, and I have some different ones. Okay. Take 20 seconds to think about what you.
So in this part, they're actually given in B2 level, they're giving a task sheet. Okay, this is the interlocutor task sheet. This is the candidate's task sheet, and they have to find an agreement, right? So obviously, the way you can help them here is to brainstorm all the language of suggesting, agreeing. A lot of you are Italian, and I always find that it's more difficult for Italians to ask questions in English, because in Italian it's much easier. But in English you've got to invert things, you've got to add words, obviously auxiliaries, and I think it's really important to give them the language that they need to do this task, to ask questions. So for example, the language of arrangements, things like what about going, and how about meeting, all this type of language. Okay, I've got let's meet at, all this. Okay, does 3 p.m. suit you? So get them, get them to brainstorm this language, get them to practice this language. And you don't have to write this down, because I've got a little surprise for you in a minute. Languages of discussion, suggesting things like why don't we, or shall we? These are all, these are all different to Italian language, and it's really nice for students to practice them until they become like internalized. And then we've got language of disagreeing politely, so for example, well, I prefer to, I'd rather, okay? What I've done is you can actually agree and disagreeing, or go, oh, okay, great, or yes, why not? But I've actually this is C1, and it's part 3. The difference is they have a spidergram, and they have to compare opinions on something a bit more abstract. Okay, so they've got to think more and use more abstract thought. I've actually prepared a little Padlet for you all with all this language. So we have added hedging and things like that. And if you've got your phones, you can actually, I've created a QR code, which you can just, hopefully it will work. You can actually take all the language that I prepared for you with your QR code. And if not, we can maybe send this after the webinar, okay? So I'll move on, but I think some of this language is interesting to use, and it does help them with this task. It helps them in general with their English. Okay, so part 4 is speaking about a given topic. Now, I'm not going to show you this, but basically they have a topic, they have 20 seconds to write down some notes, and then they have to speak on the topic for 2 minutes. And after, they are asked some questions on the topic. Now, a good thing about LanguageCert is that in their booklets that you can find in the preparation material, they do have all the topics which you can look at, and it does help you as a teacher. And I always, you know, brainstorm all the vocabulary and the topics. I do a lot of work on the actual topic. And what I find interesting is that a lot of students don't realize just how long 2 minutes is. So it's really important for them to practice speaking for 2 minutes, okay? So they can sort of regulate themselves. And I say to them, record yourselves, listen to yourselves, okay? So this is one little tip. And the follow-up questions, the same rules apply about flipping the question, and also in the follow-up questions, if the first question, it's actually if they give a long answer, then the less questions will be asked. Okay, so I always say, give as long an answer as possible. All right, so that's part 4, and a little game that I use with my students is that I use Mentimeter, and I do the game. It's called Just a Minute, but I actually call it Just 2 minutes because the part 4 is 2 minutes. And I ask them to write down a topic in Mentimeter, and the biggest topic to come out is what we start with. And then I put them into groups, and one student starts to talk about music, for example, and then if she dries up, the other student takes over, and it's really nice to see, who can actually do the task. So it's a little game that students enjoy. All right, now, what I find really interesting about the topic in part 4 is because a lot of these topics are interesting, and getting students to study the topics, learn about the topics, actually work on not only their skills to be able to do the exam, but also on a lot of 21st century skills. Now, I'm going to ask you this because it's getting more and more important skills. So not just reading and listening and writing skills, but what other skills should we as teachers be working on with our students? Yes, thank you, Veronica. Creative thinking. Yeah, so it's important that when we prepare for exams with our students, we are also working on other skills, which sometimes is difficult to do because we do have to prepare for the exams. And I have got some ideas for you today on how to do this. Any other skills you think is important? So creative thinking, anything else? Now if you're state schools teachers, now it's even more important to work on different skills. Brainstorming, yes, Lisa, absolutely. Any more skills? So, yeah. Well, I'll hear some I prepared before. Knowledge, Monica, absolutely, yes. So here are some skills I prepared. Things like collaboration, intonation, yes, Mauro. Out of the box thinking, Rosanna, yeah. Now, we're all in Italy, and I know many of you are involved with all the PNR courses, which are a lot of them are to do with CLIL, are to do with STEM, and the whole idea is to work on responsibility, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, metacognition, and also IT. So these are all the skills that I like to work on with my students. And I will do like a whole project around the topic related to the exam and work on all these skills. And of course, reading, listening, writing, all the other skills. So for example, here we have a project that I did on carbon footprint, which is part of the exam topics. Very often the environment is important. So what I do with my students now, before to work on this, I used to spend a lot of time preparing lessons and, you know, looking on the internet, trying to find links. And now, over the last few months, I wanted to share this with you. I've started to use ChatGPT to help me create some activities for my students. So maybe even in the books I'm following, I'll have something on carbon footprint, and then I will maybe ask ChatGPT to create more material for me to help them work on a project. So for example, very quickly, obviously, you know, I put it in, and in like 2 seconds, it will give you a lesson plan on carbon footprint, which is so much better than before. And also things like, you know, you can actually create some more activities and give you some role play ideas on what to do on the topic. It can create some activities for you. And sometimes with my students, I will maybe put them into groups, and I'll ask each group to create material or activities for the other group using ChatGPT, and then deciding what questions to use, what activities. So it's something that I have started to use with my students, because they're all using it anyway, the majority of them. And then, for example, you can, again, with Talk Pal AI, you can talk, you can say, okay, so we're going to be doing the carbon footprint next week. At home, why don't you practice talking to Talk Pal AI or even ChatGPT on the topic? So these are all little ideas I wanted to give you. Also, project work involves a lot of creating images, and DAL, which is in ChatGPT, also can create images. And the interesting thing that I would like you to think about is that when students have to actually create the image, I get them to write in English, okay? Now, if their English is correct, they work on their English, they're working on their writing, and if it's correct, they will get the image that they want. So it's important to think about this when we're using this technology, okay? And then we have our final presentations where the students put together a presentation and they present to the class. And all this is done in a project of maybe 6 weeks. Okay, it depends on the topic. So I wanted to share this with you. I'm not going to. And the last part of all this is that when you do this, you're working on metacognitive skills, because you ask the students about how the project went, what they've learned, what they didn't like about the project, what they could have done better. So all of this you can do when you're working on exams. This is what I wanted to share with you. So it's not just about you know, preparing using the sample paper, which is important, but you can also develop a lot of material and activities around the topics in the exams. All right, now another 21st century skill that I work on with the exams for the speaking is, for example, I will show them one of the video that I've shown you, and I'll put them into different groups. So I'll have one group is going to be looking at the grammar, okay? Then one group's going to be looking at the vocabulary, one group the fluency, etc. And they watch the video and they look at the criteria, and they actually collaborate and they listen to the language, what was good, what wasn't very good, how the candidate could have improved. And this is a really nice way of working together and understanding the exam. And then when they get a bit better, I will say, okay, and I will ask the student to actually do the exam in front of the student. So this is a nice task where they collaborate and they're also working on their exam skills. All right, now, some tips for listening and reading. I'm not going to show you every part of the exam, but I'm going to give you some things that I use. Now, has anyone used lyrics training before? Anyone? Because I find that my students of today, their English is getting so much better because they listen to music. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but their listening skills are getting so much better. They listen to music, they learn songs, they watch a lot of YouTube. Okay, it's probably to do with us also that their English is getting better. But I think music really does help. And lyrics training is wonderful because you can do it in class, and they choose a level and they choose a song and they have to listen and write the words. Yes, Tatiana, yeah, a lot of you do. So lyrics training. Now, I love music. I mean, I do lots of things on music. And I did a little activity that I wanted to share with you as well a few weeks ago. So I would like all of you, yes, it's free, Helen, absolutely free, absolutely free. You try it out. So I'd like you to guess, this is an image for a song, okay? So can anyone guess the song? Any ideas? Over the Rainbow. I'm not going to sing it. It's one of my favorite songs. No, it's not Over the Rainbow, actually, although it could be. It's not Over the Rainbow. It's not. It's a song under the. No, it's a song about peace. Okay, about serenity. About any ideas? Well, it's a very famous song. True Colors. I could sing all these songs. No, it's not true. There we go. Someone's getting Mauro Francesco Papagni. Well done. Yes, Laura. Yes, it is Imagine. It is. It's one of my favorite songs at the moment. So this is an image. So now I would like you to think about as many themes, those of you who know the song, as you can from the song Imagine. So themes, okay? Themes in the song. So fingers on your keyboard. You see, you're about to fall asleep and I've woken you up with this activity. Peace, religion, immigration, Laura, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Peace, Melanie, Laura. Okay, so we're talking a lot about peace. All right. Nature also. Yeah, dreaming. Yes, absolute diversity. Peace, love, religion. Yes, yes. Tolerance, Rosanna. Love, Melanie. Also love. Yeah. Yes, love. Yeah, absolutely. Well done. You see, so you all know the song, creativity, sense of solidarity. Oh, yes, excellent, excellent. And my students love to do this activity. And here are some themes from the song, okay? So let's have a look. Can you see any more themes just by looking at these images? Any themes that maybe you haven't written down that you see in here? Any ideas? Now, these images obviously were not created by me. They were created by my special friend that I've been talking about. Yes, ChatGPT. Brotherhood. Yes, sharing. Thank you. Brotherhood, Mauro. Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. Super. So what I do want, I did do this with my students, and actually collaboration. When I asked ChatGPT to create the images for the themes of Imagine, these 7 images are what it came up with. So no countries, brotherhood of man, no possession, living life in peace. Okay, so I used this to create the themes, which also your students can do. You can do for your students. Then one of the activities that I love to use in class, which helps with the speaking, but it helps with every skill. From here, we did a debate on the song. Okay, so the ideals of John Lennon's Imagine. Okay, and I asked ChatGPT to help me to do this debate, and it gave me all the ideas on how to prepare the students, the structure, the opening statements, a step-by-step plan on how to do a debate, and all the things to consider for the debate. For example, can the human race live without the concept of countries or possessions? All these things, and you can actually ask it for more help as well. But this is an idea that from an image of the song Imagine, you can do a whole lot of activities with your students. All right, I wanted to share this with you. Everyone's got their passions as teachers. Mine is music, and I do a lot of activities around it, and I do suggest that whatever passion you have, share it with your students. Find ways of creating material and activities with things that you really love. So that's something that I've done in the last few weeks. All right, now I'm going to look at some of the tasks in both exams. Now, the listening task in part 1, I find very interesting because here they have to listen to short conversations in the LanguageCert exam. And then they have to choose the correct answer. Okay, so I find this also very good because it works on authentic language again. They are finishing off conversations, right? And they can you can mix tasks. So from this listening task, you can give them the transcript and they can act out the conversations, which will also help them in the speaking task, okay? This is what I'm trying to teach, to tell you today, is that you can actually take tasks and switch them around so you're working on all different skills together. Because I don't like just to work in a lesson, I don't like just to work on one thing. It keeps my students motivated. And here, for example, we have part 3, where they've got to listen to a broadcast, and they've got to fill in the notes. And here you can actually get your students to create a podcast on a topic of their choice, and then they can actually create the task for other students. So these are all things that you can do. You can do the sample test, but you can also create interesting activity around it. Okay. If you want to use podcasts, Adult Podcast is fantastic now. You can really hear the audio is really, really done well. And also we have like new systems where you can actually write. Now this is the interesting. They can actually write the text, okay, which then is converted into audio. So you're working on reading and writing skills, but then listening skills also, okay, because if things aren't right, you can just go in directly and you can change the word, and all this is work on mixed skills, as I said. Here we've got part 1 of the reading, where they have got to 6 multiple choice questions, and this is something I wanted to share with you. Any type of multiple choice tasks, you can actually get students to read the text, and then they can make up their own questions for the text. Okay, this is another way to make it more collaborative. Here we have got a long text, and here they've got to decide, why they are true or false and things. Sorry, here they've got to they've got 5 questions, and they've got to say if it's true or false. And maybe you can put your students into groups, and they have to argue why they think that the answers are true or false. So get them to do this as a collaborative task also. And here, I find this task quite difficult. It's a reading task, and they've got 4 short texts, and they've got to actually provide the answers for each question, and they've got to choose. They've actually got to choose which text gives you the right answer. And what I like to do with my students, I like to create a post-it map of the keywords for each text. So basically, they've got the text, and they read it, and they underline all the keywords, and then they write them onto a post-it, stick it on to the text, and then when they are looking at the questions, they don't have to reread everything, but they look at the keywords. So this is something that I do with my students. This is because I do teach a lot of students with dyslexia. So I wanted to share, because this is my post-it trick. There's something that I discovered in a Didacta last year, and it is Algor, which is made by Italians. It's not free, but I find it quite amazing for reading, because you can put any task into Algor. Okay, it's a web app, and this is what happens. So you take I'm just going to show you the video. So you take your text, okay, and then you click Crea. And what it does is it takes the text and it divides it into different parts, okay? Then it will create a concept map of the text, and you can actually add images to each part of the concept map. And I find it, and this is about to do it now, and see, off we go again. So it divides it into the life of Monet. It creates a concept map, and then you can then add images, and you've actually created a concept map from the text. So this is something that I find interesting. It's called Algor, if anyone wants to look at it. But also, even without this technology, I do work a lot on keywords and concept maps with my students to help them to read. Okay, so some more general tips for listening and reading. You have to do a lot of work on how to identify similar words, and it's really interesting to do this with your students. And I always say to them, very often we don't hear the actual word in the question, so they've got to be able to understand and build up their knowledge of similar words. And but sometimes it could actually be something which is actually a negative phrase, so the opposite of the word. So, to look out for these things. All right, so some tips for writing. Okay, I know I've given you a lot of information, but there is a lot to say about preparing students for the exam. Now, the B2 writing, part 1 is 100 to 150 words, okay? So the first part, they have to produce a formal response for an intended public audience, okay? So for example, they've got to write an email about a competition, okay? And they've got 3 specific points. So it's very important to tell them to answer all the points in the writing, because very often they don't. Maybe they get panicked at the exam, but they don't. And then we have part 2, which is like a personal letter. It could be a story, okay, and that's between 150 to 200 words. C1, we've got part 1 again, it's the same amount of words, and it's a formal response, a letter, a report, an argument, or an article, okay? And part 2 is long, it's 250 to 300 words, and again, a letter, a story, or a descriptive composition. All right, now, I want to share this little tip I've got because I find students are okay with, writing articles and things. They have more difficulty writing a story. So if you want to work with your students with creating stories, I really recommend working with story cubes or story dice, where you put them into groups and they've got to throw the dice, you brainstorm all the images and the vocabulary, and they get creative, even story cards. Okay, I find this is a very interesting motivational activity. And then they can write the story, they can act out the story, they can role play characters in the story. There's lots of things you can do with stories. And obviously, I always say to the students, plan your writing. Even in the exam, plan it. Don't just start to write. Do a little concept map. Brainstorm in class, brainstorm vocabulary, brainstorm grammar. It was a story, so they know that they've got to work on narrative tenses and not just the past simple. If it's describing your life experiences, they've got to know it's the present perfect as well as the present simple. A wish or desire, second conditional, okay? A regret, third conditional. We don't like regrets. So anyway, plan and get them to be thinking about this. Metacognition, learning how to learn is really, really important. I like to work with visual things. So for example, this is a story sandwich where you have your title, your setting, or an argumentative essay, you've got your topic, your supportive sentence. So, share these ideas with them. One thing that I always say this whenever I have a webinar is that sometimes, as teachers, we often underline written mistakes. And I always tell teachers to avoid that, because when you underline, you're highlighting, you're underlining, and students remember the mistakes instead of remembering the correct English. So I've stopped doing all that circling and underlining. And with my class, we create a correction code with them. So for example, so if this preposition is missing, what can I use? If the verb is wrong, if the subject is wrong, we go through this and we create a correction code. And when I mark their writing, I will put in these little images and get the students then to relook at it and think about their mistakes. Okay, so that's something I wanted to share with you. And also, with all this new technology, ChatGPT can actually give them a framework so they don't just say to ChatGPT, write me an essay or mark my mistakes. Ask for tips, okay? And ChatGPT will give tips to the students on their writing. And also, you can actually students can actually write a story with ChatGPT. So for example, in this case, the ChatGPT started to write a story, and then it says, okay, now you continue. So this is a way of collaborating and working on a story together with ChatGPT. All right, so I know I've said many things, but I would like to go on to talking at the last part on preparation materials. Now, it's really important for your students to get familiar with the exam. And the nice thing about these Language Hub books is that they have actually been mapped to the parts of the exam. So they've got the digital version have got a student book, a workbook, and then a preparation and practice. And there's actually an app as well where they can practice and prepare themselves. And at the end of every unit, we have Cafe Hub, and a lot of the mapping for the speaking part is actually in this part of the book, because they work on authentic English, and I really do. This is a really good a way of helping them with all the vocabulary and all the expressions to use for the speaking part. So basically, the book is mapped in this way that you've got the task description, okay? And then it tells you exactly, so for example, role play 1, task 2 role play. It'll actually give you the unit where you can practice role playing. For example, unit 4, role play an interview, role play a telephone conversation. Okay, so it's mapped to the book, okay, the parts of the exam. Here we've got the writing, okay, so here it's a formal writing task, and it's got, for example, page 154, writing a formal letter, writing a short story. So it's mapped to the parts of the exam. And I think we'll be sending this. You can actually look at the Language Hub book. But I think Erica will be sending this to everybody. And it's the same with it's the same with the C1 exam. It's also been mapped in the same way. And also, as I was saying before, LanguageCert has got some practice papers, and it's got booklets where it shows you the criteria for the speaking. It shows you all the practice test material, and I really do you know, I really, if you're going to prepare your students, I will look at the practice test and get them familiar with them and use them in the classroom to give you ideas on how to use even more developed material. Okay, so I've actually finished earlier than what I thought. No, sorry, C1 is actually the same. It's been mapped exactly the same, okay? And the practice papers are the same for both. All right, so I've actually finished earlier than what I thought, which is very unlike me, because I usually have a lot to say.